This is a Hot Pie Original.
I mentioned this yesterday on the show. It's pretty interesting. And I think a lot of us are, well, first of all, we're clueless. Normal people are clueless as to why marijuana is not legalized on a recreational level in the state of Texas. We just, if you're a thinking human being, you still don't get it. Whether you're into pot or not doesn't matter. It just still doesn't make any sense. But I did mention yesterday on the show an interesting effort that I think a lot of us, myself included, don't quite get. And that is the move to decriminalize in Austin alone. And the group is called Ground Game Texas. And it is Julie Oliver who's with Ground Game Texas. So it's a terrible way to start, but what's the deal now? What exactly are we? Let me start with here. What is the city of Austin and everywhere else doing to criminalize? Are we really criminalizing?
It is an offense in Texas. It's, in the state books to be in possession of marijuana or even marijuana paraphernalia. So in the city of Austin, we are collecting signatures for a petition that would come on the November ballot to end the enforcement of low-level marijuana possession cases, including paraphernalia. And there are some exceptions, some carve-outs for that. If there's public safety issues, if somebody is being harmed violently, and if it's part of a larger narcotics investigation, then obviously there are carve-outs. But for young kids who might have a joint in their car or on their person, this would effectively end enforcement. They're not going to get a citation. They're not going to get arrested. And, it's a veterans justice issue. It's a young person justice issue, and it's a criminal justice issue, quite frankly. And that's not the only thing we have on this petition. It's also going to ban no-knock warrants.
Yeah, so, we need to talk about that too. I mean, these are two, they seem to be two no-brainer issues with the vast majority of people, yet you're having to go and get signatures just to get it on the ballot. Why? I guess, why is it taking Julie Oliver and some group of people doing what 9 out of 10 people think, yeah, right on?
And you're exactly right. 87% of Texans agree with us. 87% of Texans. And yet our state legislature, who actually has the authority to decriminalize it across the state, has failed to hear 87% of us and failed, honestly, in their attempts to, help veterans. They had an opportunity this last legislative session to allow veterans to use marijuana or cannabis for pain relief. And they didn't do that. They carved out a small exception for PTSD, but not for pain. So if you're in chronic pain, it's ridiculous.
Help, right.
Yeah.
Why? No, I mean that. I know that sounds stupid again, but this is, and I think some people would say, look, it's not even my thing, but why that example you just gave, who in their right mind, politically, just even politically, is against that? Why is that? What is the immovable force that seems to be in play here, Julie?
Well, it's, if you're asking me to get into the mindset of the people who can actually do something about this, that is an impossibility. I think their politicians are known to not do what's best for the people that they are elected to serve, right? Julie, they do exist to get reelected. So they do exist to get reelected, but you know that it's not people who are growing cannabis in their gardens who are funding those reelections. We know that the entities that fund these reelections are pharmaceutical industry executives. They certainly don't want marijuana to be removed from Schedule I classification at the federal level, and they certainly don't want it to be decriminalized at a state level. But it is incredibly popular, and unfortunately, people don't always, even though, there are certain things that are good for people. Paying people living wage is good for our communities. We don't always vote that way. And we certainly don't always vote people out who are against those things.
Right. I mean, because I think what you're doing on a local level is pretty fascinating, but I think we're all trying to wrap our heads around the macro of this. So I've argued that, again, just comparing, if you want to call them sin, just call them sin, doesn't matter. Gambling is not legal except for state-sanctioned gambling because casino lobbies don't want that to be legal here. So all of us who are confused about, myself included, why it is that the industry of legalized marijuana, the voting power of legalized marijuana, you're saying the real pushback is the behind the scenes, the real vote here is pharmaceutical companies?
Well, we know that money in politics is a really, it's a thing that taints what is best for all of us, right?
Yeah.
And unfortunately, the people with the deep pockets typically are, the industries behind certain things. And again, for a plant that you could actually, if we had a home grow law on the books where you could actually grow your own medicine, especially to treat pain or PTSD or anxiety or whatever ailment you might have, it's an incredibly healing plant, I think. And if you want to use it recreationally, it's far less dangerous than alcohol. And but I do think deep pockets are behind this.
Okay.
I really do. And it is unfortunate that this is what we have to do in Texas because we can't do a statewide ballot initiative. We have to go municipality by municipality to decriminalize this.
So educate us about that, because most police chiefs of most major cities would say, and I thought most of us thought they were already, I'm out, I'm not going to waste my time and energy on busting somebody for this. So I thought, in effect, this was already happening. How does it work? Did you have to do it as a municipality?
Okay, so I'll give you the example of Austin. The city of Austin 2 years ago, or I guess maybe a little over a year ago, voted to end enforcement. Not voted, but they passed a resolution.
Right.
That resolution just directs Spencer Cronk to tell the APD to stop enforcing this, right? It's optional with APD, and they didn't actually choose to follow the resolution for almost a year. And in the meantime,
how did that look? I mean, who were they? Were they really busting low-level possessions?
Well, how does that look? If you do the public information request, it looks like Black and brown people are bearing the brunt of those enforcement cases. And even though we know that marijuana usage is across every socioeconomic and racial ethnicity demographic in about the same usage, enforcement is not that. And typically enforcement falls, again, on Black and brown communities more than their white counterparts. I will say, I've been to ACL Fest year after year after year after year. I never see any white kids get busted for pot.
Exactly. Yeah. Okay, so people are getting, even though the resolution was passed, your group and your claim is you're still busting people. So what you're getting signatures, and what does that do?
So if we collect enough signatures, and we do need 20,000 to put it on the ballot of November, then the people can vote whether they want to formally end enforcement of low-level marijuana possession cases. And if we actually do it by ordinance, APD has to follow it. Okay. It's not optional anymore.
I'm again confused on the optics and the politics of this. What you're suggesting you said 87% of Texans. I got to believe that's 97% of Austinites. Okay, what you're suggesting does not seem like a radical, ridiculous concept. Why is it? I don't understand the mindset of the city council nor the mayor. Why not get in front of this before you and your group have to go get 25,000 signatures? Why is that not politically advantageous?
Well, and I think they did try to do something, but again, it was by resolution, but they didn't codify it. And so what we're doing is the codification. They also passed by resolution a ban on no-knock warrants, and yet APD has not actually implemented that ban on no-knock warrants. I'm not going to say they happen routinely. They don't. They're rare, but they are still used, and they're incredibly dangerous, not only to law enforcement, but also to the communities in which they're served.
Yeah, that's really serious. Let's get to that in just a second. So around the country, when you read about, I can't remember exactly. I want to say, where's Michigan State? Whatever town, Michigan, East Lansing. I read not long ago, East Lansing has either decriminalized or legalized. So what stops the city of Austin from saying, magic wand, we're going to do it here?
I don't know what stops them from doing that. I mean, at a statewide level, you can't, what you have to do is direct police officers to end enforcement, because it still has to be done at the state level in Texas. eventually we have to resolve this at the state level. And I'm hopeful that eventually that our state legislatures will listen to, almost every Texan who wants this and actually follow suit and decriminalize this. It would be a huge moneymaker for our state and our economy. It's a taxing source. It's a revenue source for us. We know that teachers certainly aren't paid what they deserve. I think about my poor mama who passed away 10 years ago, but she taught music in public schools, and we lived in poverty. We were not above the federal poverty line, and I started working at the age of 15 so I could just have spending money. So this is a way that we can augment salaries for teachers. Maybe we could fix the grid. Who knows? I mean, there are all sorts of things that we could do with this revenue.
Yeah, it didn't even, I don't even believe that any cannabis bills even made the floor of the legislature this past session, correct?
One small, narrow expansion of medical marijuana prescriptions was passed. And again, it allowed, so the state legislature before only allowed, medical marijuana in cases of epilepsy, severe cases of epilepsy and terminal cancer. So they expanded it to any cancer, thank God.
Yeah.
And then PTSD, but it can't be used for pain management legally in Texas.
If you're to be brutally honest, the over/under on legalization in the state of Texas, be brutally honest.
Well, if
more or less than 6 years.
I think. Probably more than 6 years, maybe less than 10.
Okay.
Or right at 10. I think we're coming to it. And I think if enough people actually do reach out to their elected officials and say, hey, this is important to me, let's do this. Let's create a revenue stream for the services that we need in Texas. Let's allow veterans to manage their pain and their PTSD. And you know what? Let's stop brutalizing communities of color for small levels of marijuana.
What percentage of people ticketed and or arrested for small levels of marijuana are white?
I think it depends on the jurisdiction, but it's less than 20% typically.
In a weird way, this is twisted logic. So your success, do you assume you're going to get the 25,000 signatures? I would assume that you would. Okay.
Yeah, it's incredibly popular.
Yeah, all right. So that one seems like that's probably going to happen. In a weird way, and this is not to throw you off, but if it's passed in Austin, if Austin does it, apparently doing anything anti-Austin is politically advantageous for those in the legislature and certainly the governor. So in a weird way, you're successful. Austin is successful and Austin does this. Does this give the legislature ammo to tell rural Texas, see, if they do it in Austin, this is really a terrible thing? John McClellan is the co-founder and creator of ATX Hot Sauce, now in all 50 states and several retail outlets as well. So what we're going to do today is we're going to let this social media rock star chef walk us through 4 different sauces, and then I'll taste and we'll tell everyone why they should buy. You can give the science behind these, and then I'll make the simple recommendation. Go to atxhotsauce.com. All right,
I don't think anybody's heard the website.
Yeah, I know.
About you, Jeff, but it is atxhotsauce.com.
I'll say
I got that one right.
45 times, atxhotsauce.com. So let's do it.
I brought 4 flavors here, and we're going to test your palate today. Okay. And I only brought 4 because I didn't think you could handle 5 or 6.
Yes,
probably a smart move. Yeah. And so the first one we're going to try here is called Beet Heat. And just like the name implies, it has beets in it. It's made with red Fresno peppers. Red Fresnos are red peppers that are they're hotter than a jalapeno and a little bit less than a serrano. So not super hot here, just a lot of really good flavor. So we're going to start with this one, and then we're going to move up the chain.
Okay. I've had the Beet Heat, but okay.
Yeah, we're going to try it though.
It goes well with a cab. All right, Jeff's savoring Beet Heat.
I'll even do it with you, so that should be all right. Now remember, it is hot sauce.
Yeah. Oh, it is. It's hot sauce. Trust me, man.
Wait, is that one hot to you?
No, a little.
Yeah. The great thing with the fermentation process is you get a bunch of the flavor right up front.
Yeah.
And then the heat comes, but then it dissipates pretty quickly, especially with the red Fresnos. You know, this is not a very spicy one, but it is a very tasty one. Goes on great on sandwiches.
Beet Heat.
Beet Heat. B-E-E-T. Heat.
All right. Go to atxhotsauce.com.
That's right.
So I have to believe that if 87% of Texans believe in this, it's not just 80% of Texans that live in urban communities, that there are rural Texans that do smoke cannabis or, consume it in an edible. So I think it would be politically disadvantageous for Greg Abbott to come after Austin in this way for a number of reasons. One, he'd either have to come after the power of the petition, which people use across the political spectrum to get things done in their communities. So that would not be a good use, in my opinion, of legislative activity or oversight. The second thing is they would have to, tell communities which laws they need to enforce. And guess what? There are more laws on the books than we actually have power to enforce. And so that becomes a very, very tricky area of telling communities which laws they are forced to enforce and which ones they can have more discretion in enforcing.
So is your path on this to go beyond Austin? And that is,
yes.
You're going to knock out 25,000 signatures in Austin probably in one afternoon at the hike and bike trail, right?
Yeah.
Or being on South Congress and you're done, you got it. So is your idea that this is the start of a domino effect throughout?
Yeah.
You're going to start doing this throughout the state?
Absolutely. We should be doing this. I encourage other people, if they have cities in which they want to do this, they should start their own ballot petitions. But we do have a plan to roll this out in communities across the state next year. And hopefully if enough communities do this and we really do have ended enforcement of low-level possession cases, maybe, just maybe, the state legislature would take it up in 2023 and do something positive about this.
So you're realistically looking at, just taking out major cities versus rural areas, you're really looking at within 2 years having most major cities in the state do exactly what you're doing.
Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely. There's no reason. Again, it's a very, very popular initiative.
Yeah.
Should have been done a long time ago.
Yeah, it's crazy. No-knock warrants. Okay, now this, it seems like no-knock warrants that are, and you have to explain this to everyone. I think most of us know there's plenty of horrific stories, no doubt. And this one seems like such an issue that this would cross over political spectrums to me. I thought this would be kind of a Republican type thing, but the horrible story of all horrible stories, wasn't that a year or two ago in Houston where they thought it was a drug house in some capacity, go barreling in there, and it ends up in a gunfight and several people are shot and killed. And I thought at that point, even law enforcement was saying, that's it, no more of this. So explain no-knock warrants and explain what can go horribly wrong.
So no-knock warrants are a tool that law enforcement can use if they have suspicion, especially typically in drug cases.
Yeah.
Not always drug cases, but typically I think the predominant cases are drug cases. If they think somebody is a drug, a dealer, they use it. They don't have to announce themselves. They can enter a residence and, they can essentially shoot on sight and frequently do. They typically are shot back at.
Yeah.
It's inherently dangerous.
See, I thought that I thought law enforcement. I didn't think law enforcement was okay with this, since so many things have gone horribly wrong both ways. I mean, the shooting goes both ways. Law enforcement's okay with this?
Yes, they still, in fact, most police unions don't want to remove this tool from the toolkit. And, in Austin, we had a case a few years back, and it was a horrible case as well. I mean, it did not have a happy ending under any circumstance. It was an anonymous tip that a teenage kid was a drug dealer.
Yep.
They entered the home after the father had left. He left early in the morning to go to work. So it was just the mom and the teenage kid and their family dog. They entered the home. They shot the dog immediately, shot and killed the dog. The mom had no idea what was happening. She crawled under her bed and was like screaming and terrified. The kid got a gun and shot a police officer. Yep. Again, very unsafe for police officers. And the kid is now in jail for attempted murder of a police officer. And lives are destroyed by this. Truly, I mean, both sides, where they're served and in law enforcement, lives are destroyed by this.
So, but the argument back is, we've got to sneak up on the bad guys, because if they know we're coming, then we're really in danger. Isn't that the argument back? And what's so wrong about that argument?
Well, the argument typically is they might get rid of evidence.
Ah, okay.
That is the argument to keep it, is that you give them time to get rid of the evidence. And so it doesn't prohibit cops from enforcing warrants, but what they have to do is announce themselves and wait 15 seconds at the door before they enter. And they definitely have to make themselves known and enter, so that hopefully if they have to serve a warrant that is, where they're entering a home like this, it can be as safe as possible. And, so many unfortunate ones. And again, warrants that are served on the wrong house.
Yeah.
And there is no, at every municipal level, there's no recourse for households that have had a no-knock warrant served on them. They destroy things or kill people. There is no recourse for that household against a police department afterwards, even if it was served on the wrong house.
Why, using the sort of jumping off point of your initiative to get signatures, why are you doing this? What's the pushback against this? How is this an issue? The cannabis thing, everybody gets. Explain the necessity in you doing this.
Well, we have to do it because, again, we don't have the ability to do this at the statewide level to actually end these things. And
but who locally is not on board with this?
I honestly haven't found anybody who's not on board with this. I mean, a couple of people who personally are against drugs, and they throw cannabis into that category. But honestly, I haven't met anybody yet who's pushing back against this. It's again, there are two very popular issues and initiatives that the majority of Texans, super majorities of Texans, would like to see end, like ending the enforcement of low-level cannabis and ending no-knock warrants. So we think it's a no-brainer, and we would like to see that where we live. And again, we're actually on the no-knock warrant. We're following the leadership of Colleen, who did this earlier this year.
Really?
At City Council, they actually passed it not by resolution. They actually passed an ordinance to ban no-knock warrants in Colleen.
And the process is the same. You're going to go out and get 25,000 signatures. So this is again just to get it on a ballot for people to decide. Correct?
Yes, just to allow people to decide for themselves.
You walk up to somebody, there I am in the hike and bike trail, I've finished. You walk up to me, and I think we all get the easy presentation of, hey, please sign this about low levels of cannabis. What's the a quick elevator pitch on no-knock warrants?
Here's what I always tell people. I'm like, hey, have you had a chance to sign this yet? And they're like, what is it? I said, it's a petition to get on the ballot in November, and it would end enforcement of low-level cannabis possession cases and ban no-knock warrants. Okay. I combine them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But they say,
and most people are like, yes, where do I sign?
If you walk up to 100 people with a clipboard, how many tell you to get out of their face? No matter how righteous what you're selling is. I'm just curious about how that works.
Honestly, I've done it, and I've maybe had a couple people who have said, no, thank you. 2 out of, and now I personally have maybe only collected, we're kind of having a running, like internal office sort of like competition.
Yeah.
We hire people to do this, and we actually have volunteers, but I want to get my own.
Yeah.
And I've only had probably 100 signatures myself, but out of those, maybe 2 people have said, no, I don't want to sign it. 2 out of 100.
The likelihood of you're going to get the signatures on both, you feel pretty certain?
Yeah. And it's we've written it as one ordinance. We're calling it,
Is that risky? I mean, would it appear on the ballot as one thing?
Not necessarily. And honestly, City Council will have to go to the city clerk for review of signatures, but then it goes to City Council, and they can break it into 2 ordinances, or they can keep it combined. It's at that point, it's up to City Council.
Okay, you have no say on that, because I think history locally tells us you combine stuff on a ballot and you can get all or nothing.
Yeah.
Right. Would you like this to be all or nothing?
No, I mean, I want all.
Well, of course, I get that.
And I don't honestly.
But if you had a preference, how this would appear, the average person goes in to vote, and let's hope the turnout's better than usual. The average person goes in to vote. Would you prefer them to have it all in one thing, or would you prefer the success would be more likely if it's separated out?
I think we have more success if it's together.
Okay.
We have more success because I think so many people, especially, are in favor of ending enforcement of cannabis possession. I think they would vote for it. And a ban on no-knock warrants, again, it's really a public safety and community safety issue. We're not getting a ton of pushback on that one at all. Now, City Council, because they actually passed resolutions to do both of these things, I don't think City Council is going to give us a nothing. I think they'll give us the all, since they've already done this by resolution.
Yeah. You fast forward to, let's assume you get the signatures. Let's assume it gets on, the campaigning starts. It's going to get on a ballot.
Yeah.
The pushback comes from, what does that look like? The pushback from what groups on both of these issues?
I think that on cannabis, it's
The Baptist Church, maybe?
It might be, yeah, folks of a religious persuasion. Older people sometimes I am finding still believe in reefer madness, the movie Reefer Madness, and that's really unfortunate.
How old is that movie?
Is it real? I mean, didn't it come out in the 50s?
Yeah, that's a really old voter. It's a really old voter.
But people still believe that it's very, very harmful. And so, but again, it's such a small segment of our communities, and honestly, we honestly haven't encountered anybody who's pushed back on the no-knock warrant ban.
But
especially if you tell me, because you can couch it in terms of safety for police, law enforcement, and safety.
So I'm just wondering, though, when you get the signatures and when this is going to be on a ballot, is the local police union going to push back on both? Is that going to be the only entity that pushes back?
They might push back on the no-knock warrant, is my guess. I don't think they'll push back because they actually did, I think this year, put into their police training manual ending enforcement of low-level cannabis. But that's, again, it's optional, and they could undo that. If we have a different police chief, that person could undo it. So we would rather have it codified so that it's not optional for APD. But yeah, I could see that perhaps some pushback by, the police union on the no-knock warrant ban.
I can see it now. Dan Patrick, Lieutenant Governor, one of those shirts like from the Garth Brooks concert or whatever he wears. And he's saying those hippies in Austin, they defund the police, and now they want the police to run the risk of not being able to catch the bad guys. Austin is anti-police, anti-law enforcement.
He's going to say whatever he's going to say because he wants to divide us while he stays, in power. And that's been his modus operandi. It's the same as anybody in state leadership. They want to keep us all divided, point the fingers at other people. It's their fault. Look at them. Look at what they're doing. Meanwhile, they're consolidating wealth. They're consolidating their power. They're playing to their base, things that are very, very harmful, trying to strip us of our democratic rights of being able to vote, and what for? Again, just so that they can maintain their power, grip on Texas. When the majority, again, super majority of Texans are drifting the other direction, like we want to completely decriminalize marijuana. We want to ban no-knock warrants, but they're going to drift the opposite direction.
Have no-knock warrants?
He's going to say what he's going to say.
Yeah. You like the Garth Brooks shirt, though, right?
I do like the Garth. Yeah, I don't know if people could see me laughing about that, but I'm like, I know exactly what you're talking about.
he wears a shirt that I swear is from 1992. It's got flames on it. Well, as the Supreme Court, I guess not. And the no-knock warrants have not been in front of the Supreme Court ever?
No, not.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, good luck with it. It's interesting.
Thank you.
I don't know many issues that seem where people so overwhelmingly agree, but they're not a thing.
On this is, again, it's an area we've been so divided as a nation. We've been so even divided as a state. This is something where we can actually come together and unite and use our collective voices and our signatures. And I hope I can get your signature as well. And do the right thing by again, a super majority of Texans.
If somebody wants to, if they're listening now, watching now, whatever's going to happen, give people the information on the organization.
Yeah. If they go to our organization is called Ground Game Texas, GGTX for short. So if they go to ggtx.org/Austin, you can find the petition there. You can download it. You can even reach out to us. If you live in Austin, you do have to be a City of Austin voter. And we'll bring you a petition and have you sign it. So we'll make it so easy on folks to be able to do this. But yeah, if you're on, Town Lake, if you're at Barton Springs, if you go to a Planet K store, I mean, we're almost everywhere. You should be able to find it.
I bet you're
at
a Planet K. That's stop number one. That's where you're going to go with a clipboard.
It was stop number one.
Yeah, I figured
and
that.
We're grateful that they're allowing us to keep them there.
All right, Julie, thanks.